Hello, my name's Luca Cometti. I'm a professional mountain bike rider. I've been on Fox suspension now for I think 4 years, and they just sent me the new 2021 Fox X2. So I'm gonna be comparing it to the old X2 that was on my bike. Fox has told me that this is pretty much a full redesigned shock. So I'm gonna compare it on the trail and see how it actually performs. And I'll be doing GoPros and taking times off of those to see how they compare time-wise, and then also just talking about the feeling of the shocks and yeah, how they perform on the trail. So the first thing I noticed when tinkering with the 2021 shock is that there's less clicks in each adjustment. So for rebound and compression, there's less clicks in each cycle. That being said, I was trying to mirror my settings from my old shock to my new shock, and that's not really an option because there's less clicks. So I went on Fox's website and they have kind of a recommended setting for how much PSI you're running. So I'm right around 175 PSI to get 27% sag on this shock. And I feel like I kind of have a rough setup of where I am with this shock. Throughout this video, I'm gonna be probably turning some knobs and seeing if I can get it to feel kind of exactly where I want it. I've only spent one weekend on this shock so far. I went to Snow Summit last weekend to try the shock out and see how it felt. And it's kind of hard to tell because the bike park was still pretty smooth. So I'm gonna be riding some rougher trails to really dial it in and see if I can get it to act how I want. So another thing I noticed with the 2021 shock is that the firm switch is now in a different location, and apparently it's on its own circuit, so it doesn't affect the main compression dampening circuit like the old one did with the adjustment right here. Another thing is the rebound. I believe this is the high-speed rebound, is now up top here instead of in the 3mm spot that it used to be on the old shock. So you can actually make adjustments on the trail right now without any tools on you. Besides that though, it still kind of looks like a typical Fox shock. It looks a little more sleek, a little more updated, and yeah. Okay, I'm obviously not a tech expert, so if you have more tech questions or want more tech advice on this stuff, I would definitely recommend you go to Fox's YouTube page. Jordy from Fox does a super good job explaining how the suspension works, more stuff on setup, and yeah, I'm not even gonna try and dabble with that stuff because they've done such a good job with it. So for me, I'm really just gonna try and get this shock on the trail and see how it performs. So let's head over the trail and get testing. Okay, so we're here at a trail near my house that I usually shuttle on my downhill bike, but I'm gonna be riding the Strive on it today. And so I'm gonna be starting on the new shock, the 2021 shock, and then I'm gonna do 3 runs on that, with my final run being a timed run. So I'll find kind of a start and end point and just do GoPro times off of it. And then I'm gonna put the old shock back on and I guess just kind of compare feel and also do a timed run on it on my 3rd run. So I'll do 6 runs total, 1 timed run on each. Another thing is I've spent time on both the 2020 shock and the 2021 shock, so I have a pretty good kind of base setup. Put my settings somewhere in here for my old shock, the 2020 shock, and my settings somewhere in here for the 2021 shock. I've only ridden my downhill bike on that trail, and my downhill bike has an extra like 40 to 50 millimeters of suspension. So it was definitely a little rougher than I anticipated, but yeah, I guess first runs I always feel pretty terrible anyways, so just gotta find kind of like a good groove and like a good pace to ride since I'm used to going a little faster pace with my downhill bike. Yeah, first run was good, so we'll do another run and hopefully that feels a little better, and then I'll do a timed run on my 3rd run and kind of go from there. So yeah, 2nd run felt better. Still super rough, but I felt a little more comfortable on the bike. The only thing right now is I don't know if it's because I'm just used to riding this on a downhill bike or what, but the rear end feels kind of harsh when feels like it's ramping up really quick. So So I think I'm going to try and turn down a little bit of high-speed compression to compensate for that, and kind of go from there and see how it feels. Alright, so I did my 3 laps on the 2021 shocks, and I'm going to pull this shock off and put on my old shock. I think for my other shock, I'm actually just going to do 2 runs. I feel like my first run was kind of a throwaway run anyways, because it's kind of just a warm-up, so I think 2 on each, or I guess 2 on the next shock will be more than enough to kind of get a feeling for it. That last run I turned down just 1 click of high speed, and it felt a little better, and like there's a few harsh compressions on that track where it just felt like it was ramping up a little too hard. So I think just a little bit of high-speed compression helped. It wasn't a ton that I adjusted, but I think it was a adjustment in the right direction. So I'm gonna let that be, get this switched over, and then go do 2 more laps. So I just did my first run of my old shock, which I think now that I've done that run, I've noticed that I think my setup is a lot better on my old shock. I know I brought that bike here when I first got it and really got it set up well for Laguna. The main thing I noticed is that the rebound is a little quicker on this one, I think. I will say though that I think that the new shock has a lot better small bump compliance. So when you have like small bumps that you're hitting and like really searching for that extra traction, the new shock definitely does a lot better than the old one. Alright, so I got back to the house and got all those GoPro times off and kind of found start and end points for both of them. And I actually ended up going about a second faster on the old shock. So my time with the new shock was a 1:35.16, and with my old shock was a 1:34.08. So about a second time difference on like a 1.5-minute track. Obviously a lot of that comes down to either user error, making little mistakes, but overall, the old shock back on after running the new shock first, I noticed that my rebound was just way too slow on my new shock. I didn't really give myself enough time to fully dial in the new shock, so I think a lot of it comes down to that. It kind of goes to show that even if you have the best equipment around, if you don't really spend the time to set it up, it's not really going to benefit you. Since that video, I've definitely spent a lot more time setting up the new shock, and so far it's been awesome. Just that added small bump compliance is kind of the main thing I noticed. And yeah, definitely a huge improvement, but I think I just needed to spend a little more time on the new shock before I actually did this comparison video to kind of get a little bit more legit setup on it. So yeah, pretty interesting finds, and I guess comment below and let me know what you guys want to see for another video. Cheers.